Hello and welcome to our e-Estonia discussion. My name is Florian Marcus and here we have Annette Numa, and you want to tell us something today?
Yes, I have some news for you because today we have some great news and also some sad news. Florian, would you like to start with the great news or we should go for the sad news first?
I guess I'm going to have to go with the sad news first. This will be the very last digital discussion produced by the e-Estonia Briefing Center. But enough dwelling about the bad news. What are the good news?
The good news is that for the last digital discussion, we have the coolest people actually joining us today. You guys ready? We have the former president of Estonia, Madame Kersti Kaljulaid. Also, we have the former chief information officer of Estonian government, Taavi Kotka. And last but not least, Martin Kaevats, who is actually the former national digital advisor. Imagine who we have together with us here today.
That is pretty cool.
I know.
And we also have a pretty cool topic for these illustrious people. We have, you can see it behind us, WTF, what the future e-Estonia. Of course, we meant future, no other word. And we will have two exciting panel discussions as part of this digital discussion. The first one will be done by me. It will be about the past, the last 30 years, what's been going on in Estonia, what went well, what didn't go so well. And then you, Annette.
I will take everybody to the future, of course. We're going to talk about where Estonia is actually heading to, because that might be one of the most common questions that I have been asked here at the Briefing Center. What's the next step to Estonia? And you know what? Having these three people together with me in a panel, we're going to figure it out where Estonia is actually going.
So we will figure out some stuff today, and you will also figure some stuff out back at home, because we also have a tiny present for one of you. What do we have planned?
Well, you guys can see what Florian is wearing, this super nice sweater. Everybody would like to have one, right? So we actually have a surprise for you, because if you will come up with a very, very nice and interesting question, then we're going to actually select the winner today. And one of our listeners today, and we know that there is thousands of you, so really try to come up with a very, very special question today. So we're going to select the winner, and one of you is going to win the same sweater that Florian is wearing. Maybe not the same one that Florian is right now wearing, but we will definitely give out a new one.
Yeah, nobody wants this one anymore. But you guys are veterans with Works Up by now, so you know how to ask your own questions in the Q&A session, and you can also upvote other people's questions if you think that another person deserves that hoodie or that sweater a bit more than you do. But enough talk for now. We will need a quick short video where we show you what we've been up to over the last few months, and I will take those couple of seconds to get back to the seat to start with the panel discussion.
And he's going to jump to the past now.
Let's go back to the past. Let's take a look. Hello and welcome to our very first edition of our digital discussions.
From digital health solutions to combating, of course, also COVID-19 crisis.
Everyone here has and needs to have a secure and unique personal digital identity.
This kind of combined solutions will take actually our services to next level.
Well, I promised you I would be back with you after this short clip, and here I am with our three illustrious guests that have shaped digital Estonia for many, many years, and also about the future. We will talk about that later, but for now, thank you so much for being here, and we will talk about the past. Actually, I've already seen on the tablet that we have some questions from the audience, but I will take the right to ask you some questions first. Thank you so much for being here. The first question that I would like to start with is something that I think we all have had to deal with some myths and misunderstandings about e-Estonia. Something that comes to my mind very quickly is the Wi-Fi in every forest, but perhaps you can also share your own thoughts and experiences. What is the most annoying or prevalent myth about digital Estonia that you have experienced during your tenure, during your work, Ms. President?
I cannot say enjoying. I've rather been enjoying myself. Nothing has annoyed me by all the various understandings of what a digital government really might mean. Mm-hmm. And if you then come down to the basics and say, you have documents on paper and people can sign them on paper if they have the right to. For example, CIO can sign a document for a company on paper provided the documents are correct and he has been given the right to do so. Well, nothing changes. The document is online. The role management doesn't change at all. You simply do it wherever you are. And then everybody's like, oh, that's it. And then you say no, but yeah, it's seriously easy. It's a simple thing.
Yeah.
I believe simplicity is encouraging. Mm-hmm. Many are disappointed because Estonia is not on Mars. But what can we do? E-government actually is a simple thing. But simplicity means you try and it works millions and millions of times. There's value in it.
I believe you have actually signed a government cabinet into power while you were abroad. I believe you were in Portugal?
Yes, not cabinet, but signed the candidate for prime minister. Yes, indeed, from Portuguese parliament.
Yes.
Everybody was very interested. And also they thought there will be more fireworks. A few clicks.
No big drum roll digitally or something. Yeah, it's just a signature at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yes, my favorite signature, though, came from Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And this was also testing the rapidity of the new satellite generation connection. Will it time out or will it not time out? Luckily, it didn't. So decorations could be awarded to Estonians in February.
Very well deserved. Martin, what are your thoughts and experiences about this?
So in my 6 years in the government, I think one of the biggest myths and constantly still battling is that people and everybody thinks that this is all about technology, which is not. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's about building a community and trust and building an open mindset and culture. And still going abroad, looking at different governments, building their own digital solutions and ideas. They all come out with these fancy gadgets and think that this one gadget will solve the world, while they all miss the point. It's actually something more fundamental in building this mindset and the community. And I don't see a lot of that around because all these kinds of different plans of digitalization are produced in high quantities. Bureaucrats are producing papers, and probably governments are also spending a lot of money on digitalization. Mm-hmm. But they actually lack a coherent plan in building this cultural change and mindset. They still think that this is about technology, rather than this technology is a tool that enables us to build different ways of life or a cultural change. Mm-hmm. And I think this, for me, is the biggest myth that I still see a lot around.
So you're saying blockchain will not fix everything?
Well, definitely not, but blockchain is not, it's just a tool to build a community mm-hmm. and trust within that community. So people think that technology is a goal on its own right? It's still a tool.
Yeah. Davi, your thoughts?
We have two different scales here. Like if you take your example about Wi-Fi in the forest as a myth, which was a myth.
Yes.
I think a similar example is that there is an way of thinking that everything works perfectly in Estonia. Mm-hmm. So but it doesn't. Like sometimes things break, and so not all the registries are working as planned, etc. So that's definitely annoying, thinking that everything is perfect. Mm. But taking those more broader view, then I think what is annoying is that whenever you start talking about digitalization, it very quickly goes to digital government, which is not the point at all. Estonian success is not digital government. Estonian success is digital society, which means that government, together with private sector, has developed tools and processes that support digitalization everywhere, especially in private sector, because in everyday life, like 90%, 95% of our life, we actually interact with the private sector, like the banks, with the telcos, whatever. Like, so the government is just a small piece. So focusing only on e-government is already like totally wrong approach. Like, so. And that annoys me. Like whenever you talk with Germans or Swiss, they always start with e-government.
I'm choosing not to take personal offense at that.
Yeah.
Actually, you've made a good point, and the lovers of our website, e-Estonia.com, will also know that for a long time it said on our website at the very starting page, we have built a digital society and we can show you how. We didn't say we've digitalized taxes and you can do it as well. So there is a different side to this. You want to say something?
Yes, because I've actually thought a lot about this paradox. Estonia is, digitalized. One thing, we have digital signature with which we can interact, act and transact with each other. It's a big thing, but it's promoted by the government, and government has given it also the legal assurance that it will always work, it is guaranteed, and if somebody misuses it, they will face trouble in this society. Estonian private sector is not overly digitized. There are many higher than us in the indexes. But this one tool from the government, despite the fact that we believe that actually private sector and people's initiatives change societies, has changed our society into digital society. So even for me, who is a Milton Friedman type of thinker, governments do matter when it comes to social and societal changes. And it's always been such a pity when then public sectors elsewhere blame private sector for anonymity, nicknames which are used, so lots of bad things go on online. Yet it is the tool from the government which guarantees the basic safety of digital services. And nobody else can do it because, no private company has passporting rights, only governments do.
Tavi.
True, but like in Sweden, for example, their identity was developed by banking sector. So, but that's the point, just to add to previous thoughts that government basically supports with additional tools. If you want to continue signing your papers physically, if you want to basically transfer millions without clear understanding who is behind the device, it's up to you. You are private sector, it's your decision. But if you want to do it in a more secure way, if you want to do it location independently, then the government supports the whole society. So I think that's a big differentiator when you compare Estonia with others.
But I would a bit widen it as well, meaning that, yes, the digital tool of signature and identity is one of the key pillars of any kind of digital society, whether we're talking about China, Estonia, or whoever, basically. But for Estonia, this is like if we take a wider concept of identity, not necessarily the technical one, then the digital identity, basically, I would say, has transformed our own identity as a nation as well. So the cultural and mindset change starts from the tool, but it actually transforms the society wider.
Yeah, true. We already have so many good questions, but we also only have limited time. I want to ask one question from myself still, and then we will move to the audience. President Kaljulaid, you said in a Spiegel interview several years ago that big industrial nations that the Estonians thought that big industrial nations wouldn't allow themselves to fall back for more than 5 years in terms of digitalization. I would ask you, how far behind are most nations now? And to the other two, perhaps, how can they catch up fast?
Well, if we stick to the most visible sign, still for a second, I apologize. I agree that digital society, of course, slightly bigger than digital ID. It's also, for example, proactive services by the government because people don't want to apply for services. If the government knows they're an event, government should pay out or, offer support. So this is also digital society. But if you measure by that, then I think it was 2017 when in Germany you could get a digital ID, but it's not stuck to your your ID card.
It's still not compulsory.
It's not compulsory, and it's not also offered for free together with your travel ID. What do we have here? France has installed the digital ID and several others, but it only transforms the society if people really use it. And there you cannot achieve it unless private and public sector together use it, because you use a government service maybe 4 times a year, whereas I check into my bank I believe more than 3 times a week. So overall, unless you join private and public sector into one digital ecosystem, you wouldn't transform the society. So I would say many countries, even if they have ideas, have not yet started that journey.
So you would feel comfortable in putting a number of years on how far countries are behind?
I said at minimum 17 for
Okay.
Germany, for example. But I do believe that we cannot be complacent here in Estonia. There are other ways and means probably to achieve digital transformation in society, which we haven't thought about, and some country may have achieved it differently.
Martin and Davi.
So one of those things how other countries could start actually their digital transformation processes. One of the examples is in the 60s and 70s, the US military started building a super high-end fighter jet. And basically, it's a super complex piece of machinery. And they kind of calculated that if they continue the business as usual, the complexities of these various different elements and parts and the components will go higher and higher, and the cost of production of it will also go higher and higher. So their calculations or ideas were basically that the whole US military machinery and budget would have the money and finances to actually build one aircraft in the year 2000. So in that, they kind of realized the problem that the back-end complexities of these processes is going higher and higher in an exponential growth curve, basically. But what they did is they basically hired system architects. Architecture is a discipline that actually simplifies complexity, makes levels of abstraction. And currently, I would say there is far too less architects in digital societies. The decisions are made by people who lack any competence on digital society. And also, I would place trust in open source technologies. Mm-hmm. Because the problem is that if you buy from large-scale vendors, then you get stuck in those flashy keynotes. And of course, maybe a politician or a person responsible for the budget likes those slides that are moving in a smooth way and the rounded corners, and probably the charismatic person explaining it. But in a longer term, you get vendor locked, and the problem, the solutions might not be as adaptive as you actually need for the current standards. So basically, the point would be to have good, solid architecture and place our own infrastructure and start building actual digital public infrastructure that is shared across the borders or in an open way.
Davi.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. So
are you proud?
Yeah, also proud engineer.
Excellent.
True. But which means that I have a very practical view here. I mean, you have to put those digitalization into the phases. So when you talk about can Germany or other countries collect data, obviously they can, no question.
And they do.
And they do. Can they digitalize their services? Yes, they can. So we are not nothing special here. But that's not what the digital society is about. So the question is how you combine different data sources to solve very complex problems. For example, how your curriculum in elementary school influences your future salary, for example. Or I mean, if you put very complex questions onto the table, then you need to have an ability to connect data, and without unique identifiers. This is from the engineer perspective, it's impossible. So from that perspective, that level, Anglo-Saxon countries never reach, because they have decided that there won't be any unique identifiers in UK or in Germany that are multi-used in private sector and government sector.
Yeah.
So it depends what you put as a goal.
So that's just where you have to start.
Yeah. But obviously, it depends also if Scandinavia and Baltics and let's say China, what is our ability, who can actually connect different data sources from private sector and government sector, if we are actually capable to ask those hard questions in a proper way to be solved. If we are not capable and we are still just collecting data, then it's quite easy to catch up us. Mm-hmm. But if we move on, without radical changes with their mindset in UK or Germany or US, never.
I add something to it.
Absolutely.
Because
yes.
some people listening to Taavi and these numbers, identification numbers through which you can, spot different elements in everybody's CV which are common.
Yeah.
And Estonia is not definitely about social scoring system, obviously. We have a black box through which this stuff goes so that if somebody needs these statistics, they do get it in an anonymized format, obviously.
Yeah, that's a very relevant. Yeah.
It's a good addition.
Actually, there are some other solutions, like for example, India, who actually has unique identifiers called Aadhaar, but they lack basically processes and services to be digitalized. They use persons themselves. So, like I, as a person, I'm the intermediator of my data, like taking it from one registry and sending it to another one. So there are other solutions, but like if you want to be like North European efficient way, then yeah.
I would slowly move to the people's questions. And there are two that have the most votes, by far actually, and they are both going in the same direction. I will just ask them as a combined one. What is the extent of resistance for further digital transformation within the public sector, especially civil servants, and what are the steps to overcome the resistance? I wouldn't talk about the future, but how did we overcome the different resistant parties in Estonia in the past? And the second question that goes in the same direction, how did you convince the politicians to support this digital transformation?
I may be the one who remembers how it all started. You know the saying, nobody wants to see the taxman. Know this? Well, Estonians were not paying taxes. We didn't have tax offices because, in Soviet Union, no salary, no tax, very simple. So now we suddenly had our independence and needed people to pay taxes. Do you really think Estonians would have agreed to go and queue somewhere to pay their taxes?
Not so much.
Precisely. Luckily, by that time, the banks in Estonia, Scandinavian ones, by the way, were offering, online services. So it was relatively easy to attach the first public service online tax board and let people to go through bank identikit into this system. But the banks thereafter said that, come on, if you want to continue adding services, we are not going to guarantee the same identity issue for you. Government has to take responsibility there. And the government discussed it, and the government was actually, not unified. It was a coalition of three parties. One was adamantly against. The only thing to convince, because we couldn't show the net present value of this exercise, and the only way to convince was that we'd already installed a perfectly normal private sector feature called intranet into the government model. And for some weird reason, which we didn't understand, all the international media was asking, is it true government is using paperless models?
What?
Who is pushing buttons? And so on. And they wrote endlessly about it. And so we calculated the cost of the pages if we had brought them as advertisement for Estonia, positively transforming thing. And we showed that this system paid itself back in 3 months' time. And we assured that this new thing, digital ID, will do the same. That was the kind of thinking track of that time. We didn't know what exactly we are unleashing at that point. Politicians, therefore, were convinced, and the thing started to roll. The rest is more or less history. Convincing people, well, you don't have legacy systems in this country. And just a couple of years before we offered e-tax board, we simply told Estonians that, there will be no cash payments of salary. Everybody has to open a bank account, and the salary goes straight there. And people were like, okay, this world is changing, economic structure is changing. They accept it. So the resistance was different in this country. That's why I always resist to advise others how they could now overcome, this resistance. Also taking into account that internet at that time was a relatively safe place to be in compared to today.
You wanted to jump in immediately, but of course, Martin, you also have some time.
No, I'm just adding to this. Always when I think about the Estonian story, there is a very pragmatic question, like why this didn't happen in, let's say, Latvia and Lithuania. So
there are many reasons why not Latvia, but yeah.
Yeah, but like Lithuania, let's say. So
I have to stand up for my Latvia. Don't make insinuations.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, but. Because I also think it was very important that we had people close to the politicians who actually wanted to build create something, and not only in government side, but especially in private sector side. Once again, all those fancy stuff that let's have let's automate data interactions between the private sector, government sector, let's create digital identity, etc. All those initiatives actually came from the private sector. The need came from there, and they were listened. And I think one of the reasons here is very blunt, is that most of the old guys back in the government back then just didn't understood anything. So it was just the right thing, the right time. So I mean, come on, look at how smart people are now. I mean, they are thinking with their own head, so they don't vaccinate, etc. So it's totally different times. Back then, it was just one herd of lambs.
And one example of that is, although yes, I was much younger then, and I personally don't remember, but during my 6 years in the government, I actually discovered that that thing what Taavi was explaining, meaning that the engineer's voice was heard. Actually, my father had a lot to do with it, and he was the guy who signed on the bill, giving us these mandatory ID numbers. So it's the Secretary of State in the beginning of Estonia, but also as the chair of the Informatics Council, meaning the time when all of these things started to pop up from the engineering community. Then there was a need for this kind of translating between the nerds to the politicians, basically, so that these ideas would be actually heard, understood, and step by step deployed. And for me, working in the government and now finishing, finding out these kind of things, that actually there's this longer story. And for me, as a kid, I remember Andres Kütt, Taavi's colleague, is doing this series of these old school ICT guys, and I remember all of these main nerds, in a positive way, from the community, coming to fix our computer at home. I needed a new sound card because we had new games and needed better music and so on. But I think the essence and also the resistance comes from that community that was very strong, tightly knit, that had trust and respect towards each other, and it kind of worked. But another key feature of why this happened here was also that it happened before all of these things became mainstream. Like in 90s, end of 90s, 2000s, like this privacy issue that we have going out now, this was totally different in a small community. So it was not necessarily the front news in the biggest newspaper.
On the other hand, it's very much for privacy. Yeah. For example, if you want to apply for social support, you don't want in Estonia your neighbor to know it. So obviously doing it online guarantees you more privacy. This, by the way, holds today. But if asked from me, and it is very often asked, why Estonia? My answer is precisely what you said. Estonia is not divided into public and private. Never has been. In labor market, anywhere else. This is the sole and single biggest reason. We never thought, because this is done in private sector, it's not done in public sector, when it all started to happen. We simply did it because technology was available.
Yeah. We very slowly have to wrap up. I will ask you one very simple last question. Favorite digital service in Estonia?
Most commonly used, my bank.
Okay, yeah. So private sector, there you have it.
Probably taxes. I don't want to know anything about them.
You don't want to see that tax?
No, I want them to be okay, but...
I'm now even curious to see one in my life.
Taavi?
I think I will pick e-residency.
Any particular reasons you want to tell us about?
I mean, just thinking
Who
back,
made it?
Just thinking back to the start, it's not the question who made it, but it was just so outrageous. And then we look at let's say, especially in blockchain areas, you see people talking about decentralized autonomous organizations, countries in the cloud, etc. Those were topics for us in 2013-14, and I definitely know that we also inspired many of those people in Silicon Valley back then. So it has it was a government startup. It is a government startup.
Country as a service.
Yeah. So just different type of thinking.
Very well. Well, there you have it. So this is our small chat about the past, and after a quick video about things that are going on in digital Estonia today, I will hand over to my lovely colleague Annette Numa for a quick chat about the future as well. Let's take a look.
Bureaucrat. I'm not sure what there is to talk about, really. What's so special about it anyway? All right. Bureaucrat is merely the official AI-based virtual assistant of Estonia. Honestly, it doesn't do anything that remarkable. Actually, it mostly does completely mundane and sometimes even boring stuff, such as applying for a permit, renewing your identification, or reporting lost documents, applying for family benefits, or borrowing a book for school, standing up for consumer rights, dealing with a fender bender, notifying of vaccinations, identifying mushrooms, and 1,000 other boring things. Now that you've listened to all this, you're probably wondering what you will do with all the free time on your hands. Well, who would know? Who would know?
It's the perfect weather for a day at the beach. I'd recommend taking the electric scooter and hopping on a bus.
With the help of e-Estonia's virtual assistant Bureaucrat, you won't lose any more time solving everyday problems. Pick your preferred device to interact with Bureaucrat and get everything done through one communication channel.
How can I help you?
All right, thank you very much, Florian, for taking our panelists back to the past, and I will now take our panelists to the future, which is obviously very, very exciting here. So I would actually start with the very first question here, very simple question. We know that many countries are starting this digitalization process today. I mean, especially when I think about the recovery funds that the EU is giving out as well, and they are in a process of beginning this process today. If I think about back like what Estonia did like long time ago, if you would be in a position that Estonia would have to start everything from the scratch today, would we change something when it comes to building the infrastructure? Maybe Madam President.
I wouldn't change too much. I would still even pick KSI, keyless signature infrastructure, over blockchain, knowing that it's economically better because it's cheaper. Also, it saves energy. I would also still go for this kind of solar model where you have kind of a nucleus where you can then connect each and every service, because this makes the number of services you can attach infinite. If we had happened to build a train where you have to always enter the first wagon and then walk to the right place, it would be far worse. So it wouldn't change that much. What I would probably change is I would go more for handheld. I mean, mobile phones are much more common than computers are or ever were. So probably I would start from mobile phone services.
Well, we see this actually happening currently in Ukraine, where they also just put their identity cards already to the phones, which they use very actively already as well. So obviously, is there any steps that we should skip if we would start today? There were many, obviously.
You just made like a great example that Ukraine put the driving license into the phone, and they're very proud of that. And Estonians feel like why should I carry my driving license at all? So that's the thinking I think that needs still to be developed. But as an engineer, I would change a lot. Because the world is not the same anymore, and the tools that are available, the methods that we could use to make it more efficient, more user friendly, etc. It's a totally different world today. But I would basically keep the principles. Still unique identifiers, privacy first, protecting everybody's privacy, that has to come first. Building it together with private sector, using understanding that most of those functions and tools are actually meant for private sector. So all this, those principles I would keep, but I would change the technology.
One of the things that actually I have encountered a lot is people think that X-Road is a technology. And I would say that it's not. Yes, of course, there's a technological component and it's kind of important, but it's more of a governance model and more of a kind of a governance in the legal system and the community building system. And this I would most definitely keep. But from the technological part, I would switch it to the matrix protocol basically nowadays. But yeah, if I would start now.
But your question was like, can certain steps can be skipped?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Obviously, because technology is different in a way. But now I would let you do Martin. If Madam President, your next post, your next position would be to be Estonian government's Chief Information Officer. We have one of the former ones here. What would be your number one priority today?
I have to switch for that actually from content to carrier. Trusted connectivity. Try to explain. I mean, we all use GPS. Many companies globally invest, into the systems which use GPS. My children think it's a natural resource somehow attached to our Mother Earth. Actually, it's a technology supported and promoted by a democracy, which means that the threshold to withhold a service to achieve your political objectives is sky high. Really sky high. And we need now to make sure that our 5G networks, Internet of Things, have exactly the same kind of security of service, which means that this discussion of the 21st century is the most important. Who controls the networks? Are they democracies or are they not democracies? This would be my number one. If you want one from content, then we are a lot threatened by these tech guys by the post-quantum ID problem. Obviously, that's an issue. And then, I have lots of, ways and means I see which we could use much better. For example, why on earth do children in the school in Estonia and elsewhere still go to the class where a teacher teaches from one textbook all the children who have different interest patterns and therefore different knowledge patterns? Why cannot children just learn from the system where they get feedback, climb on the next level, and the teacher functions as a supporter of this learning? Why this is important? Because when I was 10, my knowledge was more or less the function of my age. Nowadays, this isn't. It's the function of a child's age and interests. And they are far more varied in any classroom. So I think we need totally the way we train and teach children.
That's good. And now, Davi, when I would take you away from proud engineers today and I would say back to the public sector, I would put you to the position of being
no.
But if I wouldn't allow you to say no, if you wouldn't have a chance and you would have to be in the office again and prioritize one single area sector or the goal that 100% needs to get the support from the government and from the ministry, then what you would focus on?
Like I said in previous session that we are in the phase where data is collected and data is connected and data quality is reasonably high, which means that we could use this for very, very heavy AI and machine learning, basically searching patterns that are unthinkable. Like, for example, like we did VAT tax control system where it was job done by person and now it's fully automated, done by robots, and we are the best tax collectors in the world. So the same way, like searching those very solving very hard problems in every area, like training, teaching those silos to work with their data and using other resources from other silos, private sector, etc. So that I would do for inside. For outside. The world, especially in crypto world, doesn't have enough regulatory support. So, for example, if we form a DAO and we want to create, let's say, some kind of green fund, and they want to invest into the forest, and we want to buy land and plant the trees, etc., there's no regulatory that supports this kind of simple tasks, for example. And I truly would like Estonia to be the first big one who actually makes it happen, in a way that if you go to court, the judge doesn't look at you like, what the hell is this? What do you mean token? But they actually can support it legally also.
If I would be the CIO, then, during my 6 years in the government, the word that always brought goosebumps to all over my body was procurement. This is something that bureaucrats use quite often, and it means a lot of quite stupid work, actually. I understand the meaning, the need for such thing. Competition needs to be fair, transparent, and all of those things. But if the whole Estonian ICT budget would be somehow mine to manage, then I would switch the whole budget to micro procurements, meaning that every time code is produced, it's probably less than 20,000 euros. Main part is... It's
a nice dream.
I know. But the main part is that actually the core competence for the government is the business processes and the architecture behind it. Yes, of course, those things are more complex, more expensive. But if we would have this kind of a micro procurement system, which basically is kind of like Uber or a Bolt for government ICT, where people who not necessarily have the college degree finished, but have been vetted by professionals, their skills are there, would be able to participate in governmental ICT in small projects, then I would also open up this to the whole world, because Estonian market is small, the supply and demand is limited, and build this kind of a global platform of basically people who actually have the ownership over these small bits and pieces, because we do understand that the future of governance is based on microservices, because all of these things need to be as adaptive as possible. And as we see that there are lots of changes coming, we need to build the whole architecture in a way that is much more flexible. And currently the biggest bottleneck, I would say, is the word procurement.
If I may add something to what Taavi said, this legally permissive environment for new technologies, this is extremely important, and I think that is why the government has decided on Accelerator Estonia, where, I mean, ideas are pitched and government puts its own money in. And this is not because there is not enough startup money globally or in Estonia, but precisely to make government directly linked to this new idea development, which will then force the government also to propose the necessary legislation to allow for AI, for crypto, all these elements to develop in Estonian digital ecosystem. And this could be potentially one of the most, kind of pushing or developmental tool for next generation e-Estonia. At least we have recognized the need. How it will work out, we will see.
All right, now I'm bringing up one of the problems we are facing right now in our world, and this is overcoming the skills gap. We know that Estonia is also, I would say, let's be honest, missing workforce working in IT. And if you think about the future, and there is one very good initiative that came also, Jõhvi Coding School, so that really private sector put their heads together and said, we really need more people working in our companies. So we need to produce them more in a way. How can we overcome this skills gap for the future? What will be the Estonian next steps to actually work with this problem?
Well, Jõhvi School is extremely good example, of course, and I believe not only Estonians can go there, but also people from elsewhere. And when they've graduated that school, they will form a pool of talent for all Estonian enterprises, never mind where they choose to live. And this brings me to my second point on this issue. Bolt employs 300,000 people globally. Estonian whole workforce is about 700,000. See?
Half of that.
Who tells you that you have to employ people in your own country? You can easily go and take people and give them work elsewhere, which is a very sensible thing to do, considering that you have to pay in the world, comparatively 33rd highest average salary in this country. So it makes much more sense to offer jobs for people globally. But I have a worry here. Global services sector is unregulated because it has developed totally unnoticed to global regulators. If we now start regulating, cloud, data accessibility in Europe, elsewhere, there is the risk of breaking this global services market. And I believe it is also for us very important to continue keeping it open. And that's why Estonian companies have also sneaked everywhere. For example, OECD advisory body of ICT entrepreneurs some Estonian is always there to say, beware, you are breaking something which is functioning really well.
You had a very nice smile on your face when you were talking. I wanna know what's in your mind right now.
No. I mean, I totally agree with Ms. President, but skills like countries are in competition, or like I would even say constant war. Who gets the best people and who can like boost and grow their wealth of their own people? Like, so definitely like one EFI doesn't help us. Like, so we need more of them. So if it's a good example, it should be like I'll say. It should grow exponentially, like, and how to execute that, that's the next question. I'm a big believer of immigration still. Like, I think there is enough room in Estonia for smart people to come. And also, as you know, I have my own bet. So at the moment in ICT sector, every fifth person is a female. So if we can reduce that gap between male and female, then definitely that's another boost that Estonia can rely on. So we don't do these investments just for next 3-5 years, like we are talking about decades here. So you need to adopt, you need to change quickly. Like, for example, like machinery changed our agriculture. Like the same way we need to reshape our skills in Estonia.
And now obviously start from the very early age, and what the Unicorn Squad is doing, that's fantastic. And especially as well, we have Madam President here. I myself also working in ICT sector as being a female. It's not very common, as we know by the Estonian percentage, the last DESI index that we discussed yesterday, 22% females, which is again way too
it's good
small.
in Europe.
Well, it's better than in Europe, but I wouldn't say it's good. And there is countries that we can really learn from, also that are a little better. Sorry?
Bulgaria is the largest one.
They are the last one, obviously, as well. And But Martin, what we would do?
So in terms of skills, I would currently focus more in getting the skills into the public sector, the ICT skills especially, because the societal issue is more or less currently covered or explained by previous. I think the main trick in getting actually good ICT skills working in the public sector is first things first, governmental job is not sexy. So we need to work on that. But how can we make it more attractive is basically in a way that GovStack, an Estonian initiative, actually is trying to achieve is that different governments can actually share some very specific skills across the borders. So, for example, when GovStack, we're working in 15 African countries and they lack high-end encryption specialists, clearly, then what we can do is actually have those specialists work as independents. Yes, vetted, certified, all of those things. But those specialists can actually work for several countries in parallel. Because if the digital public infrastructure is shared while remaining sovereign for each of those countries, then sharing the capacities and skills across the borders of a very specific high-end specialist. Like, yes, of course, everybody needs to have some of the baseline in their own country, but somehow creating a framework of trust so that these very unique and specific skills actually could be shared across the borders. And that's kind of the hope that with GovStack Global, what we are trying to achieve, and especially in those low and middle resource settings. Because like we currently, and maybe Germany can afford to have those people. But as we see the complexities rising, we need to have more of these people. But at one point, the budget is coming to an end, and sharing across the borders might help.
Well, let's hope, because again, I have said that in many times in our panels and discussions and everything, there is more than 3 million people currently missing working in IT just only in the EU, which is a huge number, obviously, and we need to find these solutions, and hopefully one of them will help us. All right, but let's jump to the questions from our audience, and I don't know why, but our audience is very active today, so there is tons of questions that we obviously don't have time to cover everything, but I would just take the first one over here. So a question, a lot of AI-based initiatives don't move behind the initial proof of concept or piloting process and are just left somewhere. What are the main actions to avoid that with the Kratid initiative as well, so that it wouldn't be just be left somewhere, but it should actually be working well?
Well, I don't know too well what AI even is, because I see many things globally called AI nowadays. I mean, each and every system which is able to synthesize, data from two systems is AI. Is it really? I'm not even sure. But legal space is the main restrictive element, because as soon as you, even in Estonia, if you have a proactive service where an AI worm, goes through our systems, finds something about a person, and then wants to offer an event-based service to this person. This goes somewhat beyond to our internet service provision concept 1.0, where everybody owned the data, knew who was looking at their data, had the right to ask questions about any use of the data, and the question of opt-ins and opt-outs was not so, important. But now, if you use AI, you have totally different situation. People must have a way of opting in and opting out before things get from the online to the offline. A simple example, you have a young person doing nothing at home, not working, not in education system. And we have a system, a service where data about such children is given to social workers who can go and offer help. But your opt-out moment comes only when the social worker is behind your door in the physical world.
Not before.
How do we now, resolve these questions for our society so that it wouldn't be one-by-one resolutions, but kind of across the whole field, so that people really understand it as well as they understood this e-government promises 1.0?
I would continue with a Kratid question, and I would just turn it other way around here, because there is a question also about Kratid, but in a different perspective here. So somebody has asked that when we think about the current Kratid project and everything that we have in development or already in use, what do you think, which examples do you see having the biggest benefit for the future in Estonia? We have a lot of already, again, AI cases in use, and we have been searching for there was 50 of them last year, even more this year. So what do you think? If you would just bring it out, your own favorite one, what could really change the future?
So for me, when we started the whole Kratid thing, or Krat AI thing, or bureaucrat video you just saw, something like 4 or 5 years ago, the initial conditions were totally different, and it comes back to the previous question a bit as well. So my definite answer would be bureaucrat, which is the personal assistant to do all the mumbo jumbo for you, basically. But it actually enables us to, and it's not necessarily an AI, it's basically an interoperability framework for thousands of different AI, and creating this kind of a basically a semantic backbone for the whole society and for all of these different various components and organizations, which again actually is not a technological one, because creating a common language and meanings for words is something that is actually a cultural change. But this gives us the ability to basically, if done right, to automate roughly 90 to 95% of all routine bureaucracy. We cannot automate all, but this will allocate us to have more time to actually spend time to those who actually need to have attention. And I don't know, if you're mentally ill, have a wooden leg, and you're a father of 5, then definitely you're not the usual average case. So you need special time and attention.
All right. We have 2 more minutes. There's a question that I would like to ask from Davi here. So, which has a lot to do with e-residence. And by the way, congratulations. Yesterday you were celebrating 7 years of e-residency. Is that correct, right? All right. So there is a question about e-residency, and how many e-residency applications could process one bureaucrat when a first Estonian virtual embassy opens soon?
Yeah, no, it's not a real question. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I wouldn't like discount this to AI or like machine learning, whatever. Like, we still need to see this e-residencies a decision, like who we accept and who we don't accept, like to be connected with our Estonian digital society. And I think there is always like a human touch or human element needed. Like, even you can automate like basically everything. Like so, it would be like I say, nice problem to solve if we couldn't accept all the applications that are coming like towards Estonia. Like so.
Obviously, that was a little bit tricky and.
But like, if I may add to the Mr. President question, like I think legal is a problem. I think doesn't move fast enough, but. Also, what we need to do is we have to deal with motivation. So Estonia faces the same problem that most of the governments done. Like you already read from the Yes, Mr. Minister, Yes, Mr. Prime Minister books that why should they make a change happen if there is nothing to gain? I mean, a bureaucrat basically always gets the negative, like all the downside is there. If things go well, there is no upside. There is no, let's say, bonuses or like, I don't know, like big money made or something like that. So somebody needs to crack that, how to make motivation part of your everyday job in a way that you also financially, for example, benefit from the changes you are creating in government. Like, so if we can crack that one, like that would be a booster.
Totally. The very last question, and I very shortly want you to answer for that. If I think about that Estonia and different international organizations such as the UN Security Council for putting the focus on the cybersecurity. When we think about when Estonia was running the presidency of the Council of the EU, our focus was on introducing the electronic identity card and our like also services in a way. What do you think? Which organization we should focus on today that we could really have a very big influence on changing the world? Would there be an organization that really has a role of developing, helping these countries to develop services, or where should Estonia currently put the focus on? You can select the organization, and again very shortly, and say what would be the topic there, Madam President.
I have a dream that each and every baby who is born globally can be registered digitally over mobile phone to the national public registry of people. And I really believe that if ITU and GovStack, are inspired by this could happen pretty quickly, because 20% of the births nowadays go unregistered. Nobody can vaccinate and help these kids to grow up.
Having worked several years with these different acronyms from an expert position, then I would say that this organization that we need is not there yet. But I would probably work on something that I would call energy internet, because all of this digital mumbo jumbo actually needs to come to the physical space in this decade. And building a new backbone is highly necessary if we're talking about green transition or a sustainable development, or even trying to reduce poverty and giving like people in low resource settings the potential to go to schools and having access to medical attention. Then energy is something that needs to be solved on a global scale.
Great. Davi.
If you look at the history, Estonia has always influenced through example. So something we did that is good to be copied. So we have to continue that. So the best way to influence is continue to build and innovate, especially here in Estonia, and hope that certain organizations will just pick it up like from us.
I will wrap it up the panel here now. Thank you very much to our panelists for talking about the future. Before I will say the closing words here, we're going to also watch one of the videos now, and then I will be back together with my colleague Flora and Marcus, and we're going to announce also the winner of this wonderful sweater.
And that was it. That was a really, really fast hour with lots of entertainment and lots of insights for me personally. I hope also for you, and of course for you lovely people at home. As Annette promised, we do have a winner to declare. Tell us, who is it?
Yes, we do only have the question that the winner posted. So I will read the question, and then please, this person who posted that question, please do contact us over our email, or you can also do that over our Facebook page or Twitter as well, which would work as well. So the question, are you ready?
Tell me.
Okay, I already read the question on the stage, so I would just repeat it all over again here. So how many e-residency applications could process one bureaucrat when a first Estonian virtual embassy opens soon? So the person who asked this question, please do contact us, because surprise, surprise, you're going to be the lucky one to get a sweater like Florian is currently wearing.
Not this one, that's mine. But this brings us to the very, very last piece of our digital discussion. From my side, personally, I have a bit more sad news to share. I will be leaving the e-Estonia Briefing Center at the end of the year. I personally am so, so grateful for all of your support with all of these digital discussions, and also in general, if you've ever worked together, if you've ever been in touch, if you've ever been inspired by the e-Estonia story, I'm so glad for all of the great moments that we've been able to share.
Sadly, I have the same news, Florian. I will be leaving the briefing center as well, and these 3 past years have been absolutely fantastic. First of all, working with a colleague like Florian here, and then obviously as well with everybody who have visited us physically here in person. I have really earned a lot of knowledge also from you guys, and I do hope also that we managed to inspire you. But you will definitely hear from both of us here what the future holds for us as well. So yeah, let's hope that we're going to hear from our audience as well.
Yes, so thank you very much for being with us. Thank you so much for loving e-Estonia just as much as we do. We wish you a lovely holiday season, and we're looking forward to seeing you in the next year as well. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely day, evening, good night, or morning.
Yeah, and one more video is coming too for them to end up this session today. So thank you all so very much from my side, and have a lovely Christmas time.